I never meant to chase real diamonds. After the spiral and that chain of quiet clues, I promised myself to slow down. I told Leo the same thing, and Clara rolled her eyes in the most supportive way possible. But curiosity is stubborn. It knocks from the inside until you open. At dawn, Leo sent a photo. A rough stone in someone's palm, sunlight held in its edges. Arkansas, crater of Diamond State Park. People find real ones, he wrote. My pulse answered before reason did. 3 days later, the three of us, Alex, Leo, and Clara, were heading south with shovels, sifters, cold water, and optimism tucked between the seats. The last highway exit gave way to rolling trees and warm air that smelled like summer. Signs with cartoon diamonds promised treasure and trouble. It looked a bit like a tourist trap, and like a personal dare. The wooden entrance sign appeared with a cheerful crowd, families with bright buckets, couples in sun hats, lone wanderers studying the ground as if it whispered only to them. Leo nudged me. Either we find something, or we discover a new way to be embarrassed. I told him we'd already mastered that art and were ready for electives. Clara lifted her camera and smiled. The search field spread like a cracked brown ocean, furrows in rows, dark patches holding moisture, pale stretches baked by sun. We picked a spot near a shallow ditch that matched a map Leo had seen. Volcanic soil traps heavier minerals, and the sweetest layer sometimes sits just under a boring crust, he said with comforting certainty. The first shovel cuts felt meditative, metal slicing earth, clumps thudding into the sifter. The world around us softened into background as the rhythm of trying took over. Mud reminded us who was in charge. Leo stepped into a hidden puddle that swallowed his boot and half his pride. He tugged, slipped, and sat down like the field had offered him a chair. I laughed without mercy, reached to help, and executed a slow slide on my knees that would have looked heroic if I'd meant it. 2 kids cheered. Clara captured the moment and called it our warm-up routine. Silly and perfect. Exactly the scene that disarms you before something real decides to show up. The sun climbed and pressed on our necks like an invisible vest. We found pretty near misses. Quartz that flashed, then dimmed, glass that had learned to pretend, stones that looked promising until they didn't. With each almost, Leo got more cheerful. We're tuning our eyes. Treasure acts shy before it speaks clearly, he said. My hands grew sore and my back complained, but that small inner knock kept going. Gray rolled in from the distance as if the sky had tired of our optimism and wanted to test it. Wind touched the field, then ran across it. The first thunder said we could ignore it for 1 more minute. Families began to leave in a gentle rush. Best possible news, Leo said, scanning the emptying rows. Ever heard of lightning? I asked. It respects dedication, he said. Clara tightened the rain cover on her camera. Rain arrived with enthusiasm. The ground changed shape under our feet, a slick puzzle turning every step into choreography. I moved left, and the field moved right. Leo tried to help and slid past me like a figure skater who'd misplaced the ice but kept the grace. I planted a foot to stop myself and found the wrong kind of surprise, a disguised mound that did not appreciate visitors. I decided instantly this subplot didn't need exploring and hopped into a puddle like someone making a dramatic life choice. Leo promised to title the chapter Heroic Retreat. I promised to buy every copy and hide them. Clara laughed and shook her head. The rain softened. Mist rose from the warm ground like breath. The park grew quiet enough to hear the last drops on leaves and the tiny clicks of pebbles in the ditch. The soil under the surface looked different now, darker, heavier, the kind that holds secrets because it doesn't let go easily. Something faint caught the gray light. Not a blink and vanish sparkle, but a patient glow that said, "Keep looking." Clara steadied the sifter and we worked side by side, layer by careful layer. Mud clung to our fingers. The shovel knocked gently against something more stubborn than dirt. A small pale bead emerged, pea-sized, not pure white, but a soft butter yellow that made the gray sky look kinder. I rolled it in my palm and felt that fragile certainty that stands just before confirmation. Leo leaned closer, forgot to breathe, then remembered all at once. We didn't shout or dance. We let the rain fill the silence. We did the ordinary thing, walked it to the visitor center for someone who knew better to tell us if the day had decided in our favor. The ranger examined it under a bright lens with measured calm. She explained how shape, color, and luster play together, how some stones lie to the eye and some tell the truth softly. Her expression shifted by a fraction. A smile appeared. Congratulations. Not a giant stone, not a life changer, but real, genuine. Ours to keep. Relief moved through us like a weight slipping off without sound. A memory that won't wear out, Leo said, tapping my back. Outside, the air had cleared. The ground still held the rain in small mirrors. I raised the stone against the brighter sky and watched it drink the light. It felt like a message, the kind that doesn't bring answers, but permission to keep asking. We walked slowly along the field's edge. Tired legs tell the truth. Mine said thank you for patience. Clara scanned the rows. When it rains, this place looks like a map that just revealed its legend, she said, half to herself. A memory from our last adventure's notebook tugged at me. A rough sketch of a field with lines and a small symbol cut in the corner. The same spiral that's shadowed us since the old coin. I'd dismissed it as coincidence. Now it overlaid the rows in front of me. The angle in the drawing bothered me in the right way, meaning keep walking. Leo followed without asking. He knows that look in me. Clara adjusted her lens, already composing future frames. We reached a low spot near a cluster of roots where the soil was thick as cake. A stray ripple of water moved through it as if guided. I traced the ripple with 2 fingers and felt a hard edge underneath. Leo cleared the area with slow, careful strokes. A flat stone showed itself, darker than the dirt, almost a different language. Recognition tightened my chest, like shaking hands with a moment I'd already dreamed. The stone, book-sized, shifted when I pressed at its side, like a door considering opening. We made room, moved mud, and listened when the ground told us to slow down. The stone lifted with a small sigh of suction. Beneath it, a shallow chamber carved into clay with patient hands. My light found a waxed packet wrapped in fabric that had survived better than it should have. I unwrapped it with clean intentions, even if not clean fingers. Inside, a thin silver chain that still remembered how to shine, and a folded note sealed with a pressed spiral. We didn't say the word coincidence. The seal broke easily. The handwriting was careful, old but not ancient. Letters written in hope that a stranger would read them kindly. It said the spiral connects those who pay attention, and the first gift is not value but direction. It said the entrance to the earliest cache lies where the field meets the waterline after the hardest rain. It said the soil will point if you are polite to it. Leo read it again and said he'd never forgive us if we ignored instructions that poetic. Clara laughed. Some invitations are too honest to refuse. We waited while the field settled, tiny pieces moving into new stories. We walked the perimeter and watched slender threads of water gather and choose paths. One thread curved toward a shallow edge where the ditch widened. The flow disappeared beneath a lip of compacted clay. The ground is speaking quietly, Leo said. We should be quiet enough to hear it. I told him that was his most poetic line of the week. He bowed. We cleared the lip. The soil resisted just enough to test our manners, then offered cooperation. A pocket formed, big enough for 2 hands together. Wet clay and root scented the small air under the surface. My palms bumped something that wasn't dirt and wasn't stone, something that had been waiting. We worked slowly, passing clumps between us, carving a clean edge around it. A wax-wrapped rectangle emerged, heavier than the packet. Inside lay a shallow wooden box that had done a brave job staying a box. The lid had no lock, just a simple grimy latch. I lifted it gently. 3 items waited: a child's tin whistle, a brass token with a carved bird, and a matchbox-sized paper envelope heavier than it looked. The whistle was dented but clean. The token's date made sense for nothing and everything. The envelope rattled faintly, then settled. I opened it and tapped its contents into my palm. 8 tiny stones, cloudy white and soft yellow, each a different shape, none bigger than a fingernail. Not quartz. Truth warmed my chest the way real things do. Not dramatic, but real. A record of someone else's persistence, rain, and hope. A handshake from the past, Leo said, grinning. I nodded and added that we'd also been handed responsibility. We carried the box to a dry patch and took careful photos. I tried the whistle. A lonely note escaped, more breath than song. The token matched no place I knew. The stones looked like a small family that had decided to stay together. The note had promised direction more than value, and it kept that promise. I tucked the envelope back with more gentleness than I expected. Evening settled in. Light slipped from the trees and left the field in a kinder gray. We packed tools, washed hands, and thanked the place. On the way back, a man in a wide hat stood just off the path. He looked like he belonged there, like he'd arrived before everyone else. "Any luck?" he asked. Leo answered yes with proud caution. The man smiled and said the ground rewards patience and respect, that it remembers, and that it's kind when you are kind to it. He wished us a safe evening and turned toward the trees like a page turning. At our cabin, our clothes looked like we'd wrestled the earth and barely won. We laid the day's finds on the table, the small verified diamond in its vial, the envelope of tiny stones, the whistle, the token, the chain, and the spiral-sealed note. Leo made tea and called it celebration juice. I didn't argue with that science. We let the evening insects set their rhythm while gratitude sat in the room. I picked up the chain and saw a faint spiral near the clasp, so light it had almost escaped me. It matched the note's seal. I showed Leo and Clara. Leo gave a whistle cleaner than the tin one. "The spiral is practically waving at us," he said. "Either we're on a trail, or the trail has been on us a long time." It had followed us from city alleys to old halls, from rivers to forgotten rides, and now to an open field where anyone could try their luck. It felt right that it chose this place to speak again. Morning brought a clear sky and a soft breeze. We returned with calmer energy, the kind that follows a small wind. The plan was simple. Retrace flow lines while the ground still remembered the rain, then check the shallow edges we had ignored. Our method changed after the note. We worked politely, no rushing, no forcing the soil into surrender. Intentional movement invites luck to sit beside you. A couple joined us and asked how to tell glass from the real thing. Leo explained, "Here, diamonds often look like frozen drops of quiet luster, butter yellow or clear like tiny gumdrops, and your hands learn to feel it." They thanked us and moved on with determined smiles. A kid waved a quartz chunk with a victory grin too bright to correct. We waved back and told him he was getting closer. By mid-morning, the heat leaned in. Dust puffs rose when we shifted. I paused to drink and felt a light step between now and memory. The sketch from the notebook lifted again, a field corner with a faint mark. I scanned the rows with that angle in mind, and something clicked. The corner wasn't fence or road, it was where a shallow ditch branch met a rough berm built to guide water. Our berm had that same geometry. We stopped where the branch touched the berm. The soil felt heavier. The sifter caught more. Dark stones gathered as if they'd been told to wait. One held an edge that didn't behave. It didn't sparkle like a show-off and didn't dim when I turned it. It sat in my palm with modest certainty. Another small one, genuine. Leo laughed softly. "The ground is being generous." I asked him not to scare it. Later we found two more, tiny, sincere, ordinary magic. We took them to the visitor center as the light grew long. The ranger smiled and logged their details. "Days like this are rarer than people think, but more common than doubters admit," she said. We signed the simple form. I liked that the state keeps memory of each little yes the earth gives. Over dinner, the chain and note felt heavier. Connection, not weight. Someone had left a shallow box, not for profit, but for story. An envelope of small stones to say the first reward is direction. We planned to leave in the morning, but the field wasn't done talking. A park map showed drainage lines and gentle elevations, guides for avoiding puddles. I traced a line behind the main rows to an older, quieter section. Leo noticed too and said dew might make smaller stones easier to spot there. In soft light, we walked to that corner. The soil felt springy like a sponge waking. As I leaned forward, the tin whistle, forgotten in my pocket, touched my leg. On a whim, I raised it and made a single soft note. It floated and faded, more breath than pitch. 10 minutes later, a small stone waited at the edge of a dark patch, as if it had followed the echo. We didn't build superstition. We allowed wonder to remain. Hours moved with us. People came and went. A teenager asked if grit matters more than luck. Grit keeps you out there long enough for luck to visit, I said. He nodded like he already knew. By the time shadows stretched, our pockets held 3 modest stones, the chain from a hidden pocket we'd have missed without the rain, a token with a story we hadn't cracked, and a note that changed how we measured success. We sat on the tailgate and let the day soften. Quieter than I expected, and more satisfying, Leo said. I felt the same. The field turned gold once more, then rested. On the drive out, the sign felt like a friend, the storefront of a bakery that gave us our favorite morning. The spiral felt less mysterious and more like an invitation that repeats. I told Leo and Clara we weren't done. Leo said he was already wondering which corner of the map would flicker next. Rest is just the pause between chapters that don't admit they're chapters. Before packing for real, Clara reviewed photos on her tablet and paused. The spiral on the note seal and the faint spiral etched near the chain's clasp were not identical. The clasp spiral had a tiny notch in its final third. Overlaid, the mismatch created a narrow corridor, a little no-overlap channel. Mapped against the park diagram, that corridor aligned with a lesser-used drainage spur toward older ground. On our wider map, it angled toward 3 letters scribbled under the field sketch, LMR. Little Missouri River, Leo said. Not a risky plan, not a rush, just the next piece. We secured the diamond, the chain, the whistle, and the note. We left the site as we'd found it. The spiral hadn't finished its sentence. It had simply chosen a new place to end the line and start another. Next stop, where the field meets moving water, and where the spiral's corridor points us to listen again.